So I muted you, Paul. You need to unmute.
Well, I think I'm unmuted, but I'm not sure that we've got the shared screen working.
You're unmuted and we
Yes,
have the
you do.
screen.
Whoop. What happened to it there? I no longer see it.
Well, now there he is.
All right. All right. We should have the slideshow with Ron Smith from Graceland on top.
Yes, yes.
Let me explain that normally I would introduce the speaker and then offer an invocation. And because, well, it's interesting corollary because back in February, Ron gave a presentation on Father-Son 2 or 1. And the timing on that was extraordinary because that was the night that Rena passed over. And to have that benefit of that perception of the perspective of spiritual perspective, that is to say, we deal primarily in 1, 2, and 3 perspectives, but then, or dimensions, but then we add time and we become the 4th dimension. And so Ron's presentation showed that when we're looking at the nature of Father and Son, we're looking at the nature of God. And as we develop more vantage points, we can better comprehend that, yes, if you're looking with a single dimension, God is one. Looking at it with another dimension, you see that there's a Father and a Son. You get a 3rd dimension, and you recognize that those two are joined with the Holy Spirit, and he used the beautiful parallel of a magnet to portray that, and the magnetic power would be like the power of the Holy Spirit. And the 2 legs of the horseshoe magnet would work very nicely to illustrate the Father and the Son. But for Rena to pass that night and to be moved to the next perspective, the next vantage point, the next dimension, was for me a very useful and comforting understanding. And the irony of it here is that this evening, Ron is coming back to share with us about the concept of Christmas in the Book of Mormon. And instead of a regular invocation, I'm going to be sharing the whispers of an angel that I heard yesterday. But let me first of all introduce Ron, and then we'll get to that, to those whispers. Dr. Ron Smith is Emeritus Professor of Mathematics at Graceland College, and he takes on the challenge of various Book of Mormon subjects, presentations on the words of Isaiah, the presentation on Christmas in the Book of Mormon this evening. We'll follow his presentation on a fractal approach to prophecy in the book, and the Father and Son 2 or 1 presentation. And so we welcome him back with and he's come as a participant frequently as well. So we've had the benefit of his sharing with us for about, well, as long as the forum has been going, because he was the first presenter we had back in August of 2020. But instead of an invocation, I want to share the message that I received yesterday from the angel. Yarona Oto. I love you forever. Friends and family, it is Christmas time, and Christmas spirit I wish to employ to encourage you to live in love every day, celebrating life with joy. For the experience of living, embracing, touch, taste, smell, sight, and sound, all things mortal, tends to preclude awareness of our approach to the eternal portal. Yet at Christmas time, we tend to see in our babies unlimited possibility, an encapsulation of the Christ whom we worship as our means to eternity. And as they grow, we teach traditions which tend to observe or wall the portal up, obscuring vision of immortality behind fear, pain, anger, the experience found in life's bitter cup. Then, as adults, the mix results in tensions, frustrations, misunderstandings, miscommunications, which again create barriers impairing our judgment, our openness, our long-term relations. Yet when we make the decision to embrace God's message from above, we find the guidance of his light, showing creative opportunities to channel divine love. And when we follow in that light, like wise men at Christmas time, following from afar, we not only find the manger, the Christ in other people, we find the eternal door ajar. For while mortality dominates our lives in the brief span in life we share, life goes on. Life goes on with opportunity to continue to care. And from the next perspective, beyond the eternal door, we look back embracing you, pleading, praying from our spiritual core that you see through the Christmas lights, the tinsel used to employ to feel the love of angels, those on earth and those sharing heavenly joy. And recognize your calling to serve as an angel too, to bless with your gifts in daily life as angels are prone to do, to appreciate, to praise, to lift each other up, to transform the bitter into the sweetness of the communion cup. For to commune together, seeking commonality and building unity in diversity, serves as coursework in preparation for our roles in the spiritual university. So I speak to you at this Christmas time, reminding you to love all people, especially your sister and your brother. Follow the star with the light from afar, and don't forget to love each other. Celebrate Christmas time, giving and receiving gifts in the spirit angels employ. The eternal portal, the door is open to mortals, to you angels too. The door is always open to joy. Amen. Okay, Ron, the forum is yours. It's open for your presentation on the Christmas story of the Book of Mormon.
Well, it's a pleasure to be with all of you. I mentioned to Paul that he asked what special thing we had done for Christmas, and basically I ate myself to oblivion and cried over a bunch of Christmas movies. So that's been my experience. It's nice to see all of you here. I wasn't sure how many to expect on a Christmas evening, but Merry Christmas to all, and I really appreciate the opportunity to share with you. I did present this one time before, so many of you won't hear anything that's new. Maybe somebody hearing it again will hear something that's new, but and there might be some new ones as well. But I am going to give a Christmas quiz, and for those of you who took it last time, maybe your scores will be better this time. So we'll see what happens. So without further ado, let me share my screen and we'll see if I can get this going. And All right, so the presentation tonight is called, I've called it Christmas and the Book of Mormon. The Bible contains two very different stories of the birth of Jesus. Our tradition has woven these two stories together in ways that make them inseparable in many minds. And the Book of Mormon adds details that reinforce an understanding of the Christmas story that's quite different from some of our traditions. In this presentation, we're going to refresh our memories by actually reading the Christmas stories directly from the Bible. And then we'll take a short quiz to make sure we heard the details correctly. And then I'm going to present a version of the Christmas story that includes the Book of Mormon narrative and hopefully gets more of the biblical details right than our traditional stories, paintings, and songs do. And finally, I'm going to tell why this is important. And if there's opportunity, I have a few other things to say at the end, but that's the basic what I want to get to. So we're going to start with Luke, the second chapter, where we find the story of the birth of Jesus this way. And it came to pass in those days that there went out a decree from Caesar Augustus that all his empire should be taxed. This same taxing was when Cyrenius was governor of Syria. And all went to be taxed, every one in his own city. And Joseph also went up from Galilee out of the city of Nazareth unto Judea, unto the city of David, which is called Bethlehem, because he was of the house and lineage of David, to be taxed with Mary, his espoused wife, she being great with child. And so it was that while they were there, the days were accomplished that she should be delivered. And she brought forth her firstborn son, and wrapped him in swaddling clothes, and laid him in a manger, because there was none to give room for them in the inns. And there were in the same country shepherds abiding in the field, keeping watch over their flocks by night. And lo, an angel of the Lord appeared unto them, and the glory of the Lord shone round about them, and they were sore afraid. But the angel said unto them, Fear not, for behold, I bring you good tidings of great joy, which shall be to all people. For unto you is born this day in the city of David a Savior, who is Christ the Lord. And this is the way you shall find the babe. He is wrapped in swaddling clothes and is lying in a manger. And suddenly there was with the angel a multitude of the heavenly host, praising God and saying, Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace, goodwill to men. And it came to pass, when the angels were gone away from them into heaven, the shepherds said one to another, Let us now go even unto Bethlehem, and see this thing which is come to pass, which the Lord has made known unto us. And they came with haste, and found Mary and Joseph and the babe lying in a manger. And when they had seen, they made known abroad the saying which was told them concerning this child. All they who heard it wondered at those things which were told them by the shepherds. But Mary kept all these things and pondered them in her heart. And the shepherds returned, glorifying and praising God for all the things which they had heard and seen as they were manifested unto them. And when 8 days were accomplished for the circumcising of the child, his name was called Jesus, which was so named of the angel before he was conceived. And when the days of her purification, according to the law of Moses, were accomplished, they brought him to Jerusalem to present him to the Lord. As it is written in the law of the Lord, every male which openeth the womb shall be called holy to the Lord. And to offer a sacrifice according to that which is written in the law of the Lord, a pair of turtle doves or 2 young pigeons. So that's Luke's story. And now we're going to turn to Matthew in the inspired version. It's chapter 3, verses 1 through 16. In the King James, it's chapter 2, 1 through 16, but the words are the same. Now, when Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, behold, there came wise men from the east to Jerusalem, saying, Where is the child that is born, the Messiah of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east and have come to worship him. When Herod the king had heard of the child, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. And when he had gathered all the chief priests and scribes of the people together, he demanded of them, saying, Where is the place that is written of by the prophets in which Christ should be born? For he greatly feared, yet he believed not the prophets. And they said unto him, It is written by the prophets that he should be born in Bethlehem of Judea. For thus have they said, The word of the Lord came unto us, saying, And thou, Bethlehem, which lieth in the land of Judea, in thee shall be born a prince, which art not the least among the princes of Judea, for out of thee shall come the Messiah, who shall save my people Israel. Then Herod, when he had called the wise men privily, inquired of them diligently what time the star appeared. And he sent them to Bethlehem and said, Go and search diligently for the young child, and when ye have found the child, bring me word again, that I may come and worship him also. When they had heard the king, they departed, and lo, the star which they saw in the east went before them, until it came and stood over where the young child was. When they saw the star, they rejoiced with exceeding great joy. And when they were come into the house, they saw the young child with Mary his mother, and fell down and worshipped him. And when they had opened their treasures, they presented unto him gifts, gold and frankincense and myrrh. And being warned of God in a dream that they should not return to Herod, they departed into their own country another way. And when they were departed, behold, the angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a vision, saying, Arise, and take the young child and his mother, and flee into Egypt, and tarry thou there until I bring thee word, for Herod will seek the young child to destroy him. And then he arose, and took the young child and the child's mother by night, and departed into Egypt, and was there until the death of Herod, that it might be fulfilled which was spoken of the Lord by the prophet, saying, Out of Egypt have I called my son. Then Herod, when he saw that he was mocked of the wise men, was exceeding wroth, and sent forth and slew all the children that were in Bethlehem, and all the coasts thereof from 2 years old and under, according to the time which he had diligently inquired of the wise men. So now you've heard the two stories from the Bible about Jesus' birth. Luke tells about the angels and the shepherds who came to see the Messiah in the manger. Matthew tells of wise men and King Herod, the star, and the gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And now it's time for a quiz, just to see how well you do. No one else is going to grade your quiz. You're the only one that's going to see it, unless you show it to somebody else. And if you, if I had you all in a audience with me, I would print these up and hand them out. There are 26 questions, and they're all multiple choice or true false, so you don't have to worry about leaving a lot of room. And if you want to, get a piece of paper and a pencil and put down the numbers 1 through 26, and we will take our little quiz together and see how we do. This is open book. If you've got the Bible there, you can open it to Luke 2 and Matthew 3, and or ask your friends or whatever. This is just for fun and for learning. So, question number 1. Mary and Joseph went to Bethlehem in order to pay taxes. True or false? I'll give you a moment to put down a T or an F. I really would like you to take this quiz. If you were here, I'd say let's vote on it and be see how we did. But this, of course, is true from Luke 2, 4 through 5. And Joseph went up from Galilee to be taxed with Mary, his espoused wife, she being great with child. So that one is true. Question number 2. Jesus was born in a beautiful palace because he was to be a king. True or false? Go ahead and write it down. This one is false. She brought forth her firstborn son and wrapped him in swaddling clothes and laid him in a manger because there was none to give room for them in the inns. So you see, this isn't a hard quiz. This is, I suspect that if we were to have you in a live audience, that I'd have people show how many people have got 100% so far. And I suspect that you all got 100%. So A+ to all of you. All right. The shepherds went to the manger, found Jesus, and told everyone who would listen. True or false? Well, that one I would say is true. They came with haste, found Mary and Joseph, and the babe lying in the manger. And when they had seen, they made known abroad the saying which was told them concerning this child. They told people about it. And wouldn't you, if you had seen such a sight? Question number 4. The shepherds knew that Jesus was the Christ child because they saw the star shining over the stable. True or false? Commit your answer. This one is false. This is the way you shall find the babe. He is wrapped in swaddling clothes and lying in the manger. And that's the way they found him. But wait a minute. The star is shining over Bethlehem. The shepherds are going towards the star. But that's not what Luke says. And we're going to be a little bit picky about this because the only story about the shepherds is in Luke, and he says that they found the babe because he was lying in a manger and wrapped in swaddling clothes. The wise men visited baby Jesus in the stable. True or false? Well, this one happens to be false. According to Matthew, what he says is when they were come into the house, they saw the young child with Mary, his mother. So wherever he was, according to Matthew, he was in a house when the wise men got there. According to the Bible, 3 wise men visited Jesus as a child. True or false? Again, we'll be just a little bit picky here, and we're going to say false. What Matthew says was when Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, that there came wise men from the east to Jerusalem. It never says that there were 3 who visited Jesus as a child. It just says wise men. It never says a number. Now, of course, you might say, well, yes, but they gave 3 gifts. And thinking of your Christmas today, how many of you just give 1 gift to a person, right? Only 1 gift per person. No, that's not the way anybody does it. Anyway, didn't have to be that way. Number 7, according to the Bible, the wise men were kings from the Orient. True or false? Well, again, that's false. All it says is they came from the east to Jerusalem. Now, the Orient is east of Jerusalem. That's true, but it doesn't say they were kings that were from the Orient. It says these were wise men, and they came from the east to Jerusalem. Number 8, Now we're going to rely on some of your Book of Mormon knowledge here. We didn't read it from the Book of Mormon, but people in America knew when Christ was to be born. True or false? Well, this one is true. In Helaman, the 5th chapter, or chapter 14 for the LDS version, or numbering, not version so much as numbering. When Samuel the Lamanite got up on the wall, he prophesied about Christ's birth. And he said, Behold, I give unto you a sign, for 5 years more cometh, and behold, then cometh the Son of God to redeem all those who should believe on his name. So Samuel said it was going to be 5 years. And for those of you who remember the story, after 5 years, the people who didn't believe in the sign said, hey, the 5 years is come and gone. So tonight, we're going to kill everybody that believes in those things. And just as an aside, I wondered as a kid, why would they want to kill people just because they believed something different? But we see that happening on a grand scale even today in what's happening. People are being killed just because they believe something different. Number 9, Bible prophets told of a star to appear at the time of Christ's birth. True or false? Well, that one is false. I don't have a scripture reference on it because there isn't one, at least that I could find in the Bible, that says that there's anything that says anything about a star to appear at the time of Christ's birth. Number 10, a prophet in America told of a new star to appear at the time of Christ's birth. True or false? Well, this one is clearly true. Helaman 5 again, or 14 in the LDS. There shall be a new star arise, such an one as ye never have beheld, and this also shall be a sign unto you. Remember, Samuel the Lamanite told them about a day and a night and a day that would be as one day. There wouldn't be any darkness when Jesus was born. That was to be the sign. And there would also be this new star arise, and that would also be a sign to them. He said there were going to be many other signs and wonders too. And we've had a wonderful presentation in this forum about what the stars might be. Number 11, people in America saw the new star and knew that it signaled Christ's birth. True or false? People in America saw the new star and knew it signaled Christ's birth. Well, this one is true. In 3 Nephi 1, they knew that it was the day that the Lord should be born because of the sign which had been given, and it came to pass also that a new star did appear according to the word. So the Book of Mormon explicitly says that they saw the new star in the Book of Mormon lands and knew that it signaled Christ's birth.
Ron, are you willing to take a question on that here?
I would be delighted to take a question on it.
The assertion that was America would cause me to question it because the book, the assertion would be America, but we've had 6 presentations on where the land of Nephi was, and one of them at least puts it not in America. 2 of them put it not in America, and so I would wonder if those shouldn't be given at least some consideration here too.
Well, since you're grading your own, and if that's the reason that you said false, then I would not be unhappy with you going ahead and giving yourself credit for that. Okay.
Thank you.
I'm open to that. Yes, I understand that. perhaps I should have said people in Book of Mormon land saw this new star, knew that it signaled Christ's birth.
Right, right.
Have to fix that for next time.
Thank you.
Yeah, if any of you have questions, I'm more than happy to stop and answer questions for you, or at least respond to questions. I don't know if I can answer them, but I can respond to them as we go along. Otherwise, we'll have time perhaps at the end to answer questions as well. Okay, so people in Book of Mormon lands knew that Jesus would be born in Bethlehem. True or false?
All right.
Number 12. And I'm going to go with false because as far as we know from the Book of Mormon, the only place where it says where Jesus was to be born is Alma, the 5th chapter, or the 7th in the LDS. And behold, he shall be born of Mary at Jerusalem, which is the land of our forefathers. Now, this was given some, several hundred years after the people had left the land of Jerusalem, and they knew where the land of Jerusalem was. They probably didn't know where Bethlehem was, and Jerusalem was the land of their fathers. So that's the way that it's written in Alma when he writes this down. He says he'll be born of Mary at Jerusalem, which is the land of our fathers. So they would not have known about Bethlehem.
However, if we follow your premise that it was that the wise men were from the land of the Book of Mormon, and they got there, then they would have known.
Yeah, they would have gone to Jerusalem to ask, right?
Well, not necessarily. They may have. I mean, I agree. The Book of Mormon doesn't tell us that they knew about Bethlehem, but if they were following the star and the star took them to Bethlehem, to the house, then that house may well have been in Bethlehem, or maybe it was in Egypt.
Yeah, or maybe it was Nazareth. Who knows? Yeah, we'll talk about that in just a little bit. Yes.
At Bethlehem, at Jerusalem, according to the Hebrews, included everything near there as well.
Absolutely. It's just
And of course, in Bethlehem, which was the house of bread, Jesus, the bread of life, was born.
yes, and that's very, very interesting, and we appreciate that insight. Thank you. I couldn't tell. I think that was Wanda, but I couldn't tell for sure.
Yes, that was Wanda.
Yeah, I had to stop looking at you so I could see my screen. So, okay. Actually, it didn't occur to me. I could have done it differently. But anyway, I'm doing it this way. So yeah, just speak up if you have something. Number 13. Isaiah prophesied that Jesus would be born in Bethlehem. True or false? This perhaps is a little bit harder than some of the others because you have to go through Isaiah real quick in your head to figure this out if you didn't know it. But that is false. All of the Isaiah that we have anyway, he doesn't say anything about being born in Bethlehem. Wise men who had studied Hebrew scriptures could have known that Jesus was to be born in Bethlehem. True or false? Well, that one is true because what did Micah say? But thou Bethlehem Ephratah, though thou be little among the thousands of Judah, yet out of thee shall he come forth unto me that is to be our ruler in Israel, whose going forth has been from old, from everlasting. And I don't have this in the slide set, but I just found out this last Sunday from Faye Shaw about the Ephrata. There were two Bethlehems in this part of the world. One of them was not far from Nazareth, which is up north in Galilee, and the other one is the Bethlehem that is close to Jerusalem, and the one that's close to Jerusalem is the Bethlehem Ephrata. So it's talking about that specific Bethlehem. And the Ephrata, according to Jonathan Kahn, comes from a word that refers to the wine. And so you have Bethlehem, the house of bread, and Ephrata, the wine, where Jesus was to be born. Interesting, I thought. And I'm not an expert on that, so if you ask me about it, I won't be able to tell you anything except that ask Fayshaw or Jonathan Kahn. So number 15, wise men who had studied Book of Mormon scriptures would have gone to Jerusalem to inquire whether the new king could be found. Well, I say that one is true. Behold, he shall be born of Mary at Jerusalem, which is the land of our forefathers. Okay, the wise men followed the star from the time they first saw it until they found Jesus. True or false? You have to perhaps read a little bit in between the lines, but let's listen closely to what it says. When the wise men went to Herod and they talked with him, then when they had heard the king, they departed, and lo, the star which they saw in the east went before them until it came and stood over where the young child was. When they saw the star, they rejoiced with exceeding great joy. Now I ask you, why would they rejoice with exceeding great joy if they had been following the star from the very beginning? This says they saw the star in the east. They came to Jerusalem to ask where he was to be born. The star told them that he was born. They came to Jerusalem to ask where he was to be born. And when they left Jerusalem, they saw the star again. And that's when they followed it to the house where the young child was. And so I say they weren't following the star all that way. They were only followed the star from Jerusalem to where Jesus was. Number 17, the wise men spoke to Herod in a language that he understood. True or false? Well, this one I say is true, because when Herod had called the wise men privily, which means privately, he inquired of them diligently what time the star appeared. Now, granted, privately, he might have still had an interpreter, but the interpreter had to understand the language that the wise men were speaking. And so that's why I'm going with true here, because he called all of his wise men to find out, Herod called all of his wise men to figure out where Jesus was to be born, where the Messiah was to be born. And then he called the wise men privately and inquired of them diligently what time the star appeared.
Ron, I'd like to go back to the previous question.
Okay.
I appreciate that I missed it because of the intermittentness, but because you have the Book of Mormon account indicating that they were aware of the star, and if you're talking about Book of Mormon people making that trek, then yes, it may have been intermittent, but it would seem to me that they followed the star if they followed the star from the Americas or wherever the Book of Mormon land to Jerusalem, and then had to get some extra help. The intermittentness becomes a pretty small factor in the overall trip.
it could have been that way, Paul. I'm not gonna hold you to my particular understanding of it. So, okay,
Thank you.
fair enough. All right. Wise men from Book of Mormon lands were familiar with the Hebrew language. True or false? Well, that one happens to be true. You remember that the very first story in the Book of Mormon, when Lehi left Jerusalem, the first thing he did was he sent his sons back to get the brass plates. And why did he need to get them? Behold, he says, it is wisdom in God that we should obtain these records, that we may preserve unto our children the language of our fathers. Now that's 600 years before Christ. And then 400 years after Christ, so 1,000 years later, in Mormon, as he's writing, he says, if our plates had been sufficiently large, we should have written in the Hebrew. And so he still understood the Hebrew because they had the written record. And just because I have the opportunity, I may have said this before, but when I was in Umuahia, Nigeria, and I spoke to one of the local Eze, who is he's a king. He's got a crown, he's got a throne, he had a coronation. He shows pictures of that. And I asked him, where do the Ibu people come from? And he said, we're from the house of Israel. And I said, I'm really interested in that story. Can you tell me more of the details? He says, no. He said at the time that our forefathers left, at the time of the diaspora, he said our forefathers didn't bring any records with them and they were illiterate. And so all we have is that we've handed down from father to son all these generations that were from the house of Israel. He said, now the people that are educated will kind of hem and haw about it and whatever, but every Ibu person knows that we're from the house of Israel. So I thought that was an interesting answer. The Book of Mormon people knew the Hebrew language. The wise men, anyway. Angels appeared to wise men in Book of Mormon lands about 2 years before the birth of Jesus. True or false? Well, this one is true. Again, in Helaman, the 5th chapter, in the 90th year of the reign of the judges, the words of the prophets began to be fulfilled, and angels did appear unto men, wise men, and did declare unto them glad tidings of great joy. Thus in this year the scriptures began to be fulfilled. And if you recall that Jesus was born in the 92nd year, then this being the 90th year, that's 2 years ahead of time, the angels appeared. Now you remember, Samuel came 5 years ahead, and this then is 3 years later, two years ahead, and tells them that Jesus is going to be born.
Ron, I see Terry Walker with a hand up. I'm not sure
Okay.
how long that's been, but might be we should check.
Sure. Go ahead. Are you out there, Terry?
Terry, you're muted.
There we go. Okay, I have a question about the Hebrew speaking in the previous question there, the previous statement.
Okay.
The people at the time of Christ in the Middle East mainly spoke Aramaic, not Hebrew. And so I'm wondering what that has to do with the discussion of Hebrew in there.
Well, it's because, well, I mean, you may be right. I don't know whether King Herod spoke Hebrew or not, but at least there was that language that they would have had in common with wise men, people that were learned. When the superscription was written over Jesus' head, one of the things was he wrote it in Hebrew as one of the languages, right?
The Romans did that, not the Hebrews, the Jews.
Okay, so I'm not an expert on that, and I will gladly be educated if I need to be educated in that. So
Thank you.
you bet. You bet.
Val has raised his hand. Let's give him the chance.
Okay, go ahead.
It's on that same Hebrew question. So I put this in the chat too, but in the Book of Mormon, the language that the Book of Mormon was recorded in was Reformed Egyptian, and their ancestor actually had been an Egyptian or a prince of Egypt, which was Joseph. Now, there are a lot of Hebraisms in the Book of Mormon, it seems, and there's a lot of questions as to what Reformed Egyptian was. Is that a way of writing Hebrew, or is that Egyptian? But I think the text they took with them, the brass plates, were supposedly in Reformed Egyptian, not in Hebrew. And like Moroni at the end, and Mormon too, when they're saying, if we had enough room, we would have written this in Hebrew, but we're writing it in Reformed Egyptian instead. And he also said we would have been much more fluent, and our writing would have been better if it was in Hebrew. So that suggests that the text they had wasn't really a Hebrew text. Do you have some thoughts on that?
Well, I've thought about it a little bit, but I don't have anything specifically to of quality to add to the discussion at this point. I have conjectured I've thought that the Reformed Egyptian was the way of writing the letters and stuff. That was my personal understanding, and
Some
that
people have suggested it might be a way of writing Hebrew. That's possible with pictographs rather than with the phonetic Hebrew that was more normal. But
right.
that at least there's some question as to whether the text they had with them was Hebrew.
Right, right. Yeah. I'm willing to concede that. But they said that they could still understand the Hebrew anyway. Okay. And I mean, this is a whole bunch of years later. We would have trouble if we went back 600 years and tried to speak English with English speaking folks, but be that as it may. Okay. All right. So,
Ready for 20.
What's that?
Ready for 20.
Okay, number 20. We'll get back there. All right, prophets or wise men left Zarahemla shortly before the birth of Jesus. True or false? That one is true. The 91st year had passed away. So the angel came in the 92nd year. The 91st year had passed away, and I mean, in the 90th year. The angel came in the 90th year. Jesus was born in the 92nd year. This is the 91st year had passed away, and Nephi, the son of Helaman, had departed out of the land of Zarahemla, and whither he went no man knoweth, and his son Nephi did keep the record in his stead. And a little bit later, it says, and therefore 9 years had passed away, and Nephi, who was the father of Nephi, who had the charge of the records, did not return to the land of Zarahemla, and could nowhere be found in all the land. So Nephi, who had been preaching Christ all of his life, had been baptizing people, who had been talking about the coming of Christ, who knew the prophecies, suddenly ups and gives the records to his son Nephi, and he leaves the land a year after angels came and talked to wise men and told them that it was really coming to pass. I find that interesting. Also, we don't hear of Samuel the Lamanite again, and so that's interesting as well. Okay, approximately how long before they arrived in Jerusalem did the wise men see the new star? Was it one night, 1 week, or nearly 2 years? And since we're getting short on time, I say it's nearly 2 years, because Herod, when he had called the wise men privately, inquired diligently what time the star appeared, and then when he had the children slain, he slew the children from 2 years old and under according to the time which he had diligently inquired of the wise men. So he might have given them a year's leeway. They might have said, well, it was last year, but it certainly wasn't just one night before and then killing children to up to 2 years old. At least I don't think so. Herod was a bad guy. He killed his family. He killed his favorite wife. He killed his children because he thought that he was jealous that they might try and overtake him. And but anyway, he killed children, which has to be a bad political move. But anyway, which, as we can see from what's happening right now. King Herod wanted to find the Christ child in order to worship him. True or false? Well, that one is false, of course. Herod went and slew the children. He didn't want to worship them. He said he wanted to worship them, but he didn't want to. He wanted to kill them. 23. Joseph was warned by an angel to take Jesus and Mary to Egypt to escape Herod's soldiers. True or false? That one is true. When they departed, an angel appeared to Joseph, and he said, and take the young child and his mother and flee into Egypt and stay there until I bring thee word. And so that's what happened. Number 24, the wise men gave gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh to Jesus shortly before the trip to Egypt. That one is true. And you all know that, so I'm going to skip on. Number 25. This is interesting. 40 days after Jesus' birth, Joseph and Mary offered a poor woman's sacrifice at the temple in Jerusalem. This one turns out to be true. Luke says that when the days of her purification were accomplished, so we have to go back to the old law and see what the days of her purification were. And they offered a pair of turtle doves, and we have to go to the law and see what it said about offering that. Leviticus 12th chapter. If a woman had borne a man-child, then she should be unclean 7 days. That's because of the blood involved. And on the 8th day, the man-child should be circumcised. And remember that Luke says they circumcised Jesus on the 8th day. And she shall then continue in her time of purifying, which shall be 3 and 30 days. So you've got the first 7 days, and then the last 33 days makes 40 days. And when the days of her purifying are fulfilled, she shall bring a lamb of the first year for a burnt offering, and a young pigeon or a turtle dove for a sin offering unto the door of the tabernacle of the congregation unto the priest. And if she shall not be able to bring a lamb, if she's too poor, then she shall bring 2 turtles or 2 young pigeons. So 40 days after the birth, we have, according to Luke, Mary and Joseph took Jesus to the temple to be blessed, to offer the sacrifices, and they didn't have gold, frankincense, and myrrh at that point anyway. They were still pretty poor. So I'd like to really quickly present the Christmas story with details from the Book of Mormon in a way that I think is legitimate for us to do, and it keeps some of these details a little bit straighter. Many prophets prophesied of the coming Messiah. Over 1,000 years before Christ, Moses told of a prophet to come. Over 700 years before Christ, Isaiah prophesied of the Messiah. Lehi prophesied the Messiah would come in 600 years. Adam, Enoch, Noah, David, Zenoch, Jacob, Abinadi, King Benjamin, Mosiah, Alma, and many others spoke of Christ. Samuel the Lamanite prophesied that the Son of God would be born in 5 years. There would be a day and a night and a day without darkness, and a new star would appear as a sign that Jesus was born. The angels brought good news to wise men in America 2 years before Jesus was born. angels appeared to wise men in Book of Mormon land, saying the prophecies were beginning to be fulfilled. Nephi, the son of Helaman, left Zarahemla. The year before Jesus was born, Nephi, who had looked forward to the coming of Christ all his life, gave the records to his son Nephi and left Zarahemla. Neither he nor Samuel were seen again. God protected his people. Unbelievers set an evening to kill all who believed in Samuel's prophecy. Nephi spent the day in prayer. The Lord said that he would give him the sign that night. And the prophecies were fulfilled. That night the sun set, but it did not get dark. The believers were saved. And the next day, Jesus was born. Angels also brought the good news to shepherds near Bethlehem. In Bethlehem, it was night when Jesus was born, but angels told the shepherds the good news, and the angel said Jesus was wrapped in swaddling clothes and lying in a manger. And in case you missed it, in America, when it's day, it's 8 hours difference from our time period to Jerusalem's time period. And so day here, night there, that is a little detail that I think is interesting. The shepherds visited the baby Jesus. The shepherds came to Bethlehem and found Jesus wrapped in swaddling clothes and lying in a manger. When they left, they told everyone the good news. A new star rose. The new star was seen, and people who believed Samuel's prophecy knew that Jesus was born. Mary presented Jesus at the temple. In the law of Moses, a mother was supposed to take her first son to the temple and offer a sacrifice. If she could not afford a lamb and a dove, she was to offer 2 turtle doves. Mary and Joseph kept the law of Moses. After 40 days, they went to the temple and offered 2 turtle doves. Wise men came to Jerusalem, the land of their fathers, to look for Jesus. The wise men told King Herod about the star and asked where the Messiah of the Jews was born. Herod's wise men found Micah's prophecy that the Messiah was born in Bethlehem. And Herod talked with the wise men privately, and he asked them what time the star had appeared. They told him it was about 2 years earlier. Herod told them to find the child and report back to him. The wise men visited Jesus. When the wise men left Herod, they saw the star again and rejoiced exceedingly when they followed the star to the house where the young child was. I love that picture right there. The wise men gave gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh to Mary and Joseph. The angels protected Jesus. The wise men were warned by an angel not to return to Herod, and Herod ordered all the children in Bethlehem and the surrounding area 2 years old and under to be killed. The angels protected Jesus. Joseph was warned by an angel to take the family to Egypt, and they left that night. They stayed in Egypt until Herod died. They returned to Nazareth, where Jesus grew up. And now it's time for the final Jeopardy question. For those of you who've been wondering, where's question number 26? Here it is. Ron Smith believes there is more evidence that wise men were A, believers in astrology who were kings from the Orient, or B, believers in Christ from America. Okay, I'll tell you. I think they were believers in Christ from America. It's circumstantial. I understand that, but I believe that that's what happened. So, why is understanding the Christmas story important? Well, first of all, professors of Bible criticism point out the inconsistencies between the biblical accounts and the traditional interpretations and conclude that all of these are fables. They say that Matthew made up his story to emphasize the kingship of Jesus, and Luke made his story to emphasize the servanthood of Jesus. This is in spite of the fact that Luke talks about the kingdom of God more than Matthew does. if you just count the number of times that he talked about it. And why is understanding the Christmas story so important? Our children need to know how angels worked in former days so they can know what to expect in these latter days. The angels shared the good news with shepherds and wise men who believed them and went to see Jesus, and they protected the believers in the promised land and in Israel. Our children need to know that we have not followed cunningly devised fables, as it says in 2 Peter 1:16. Our children need to know where to look for a remission of their sins. And we're living in an age when more and more the voices around us say, oh, this was just made up. This wasn't didn't have anything to do with what was real. And our children need to know that these things actually happen so that they'll know what to expect and what to look for as they go on. That's why I think it's important. And I had a couple of more things here, but we don't have time to go through them. Let me see if there's anything else that I need to do. I did something about when Jesus was born. According to the Book of Mormon, you see, it was about a week before his death. It was the first month, the fourth day of the month when he was killed, and they started when he was born. So it was within a week of his death. So it was around Palm Sunday was when Christmas should be, I guess. Where do frankincense and myrrh come from? You can find them in the old world, 15-foot high things, but you find them in equatorial America in 150 feet high, and plenty of them, and they're still used today. And I'll skip that. And there's an interesting story in the Popol Vuh about 3 leaders who got together and crossed the sea to the east where the kingship came from. So anyway, without further ado, I'm going to say Merry Christmas to all of you, and I will stop sharing my screen. And if you want to ask questions or talk a little bit more, that would just be delightful.
Thank you, Ron. It is a blessed thing to be able to get some clarity on the role of the Book of Mormon in the Christmas story. So thank you so much for coming back to share that again. I've had a chance to stick my questions in, and interestingly, I think I missed the same 3 this time that I missed last time. But this time, at least you clarified that you would accept a couple of my interpretations, and so I appreciate that kindness.
Yeah.
I've earned lots of B's in my career, so I don't mind. But let me call your attention, ladies and gentlemen, to the reactions down at the bottom of your screen. And Val has found it to raise his hand. We'll let Deb keep people in line.
This is just to follow up on your point about Nephi. Nephi, from the Book of Mormon account, seems to have the ability to move pretty instantaneously from one place to another. And because he'd been given, basically God had given to him all the powers that God had, because he completely trusted him. And so his ability to move overseas certainly is documented in the Book of Mormon. Now, I don't know whether he would have needed to go to Herod to find Christ, but as you point out, his prophecy said that he would be born in the land of Jerusalem, so maybe he would have gone to Jerusalem looking for him. Just I think further support for your hypothesis.
Thank you. I appreciate that. One of the things that is interesting is, I mean, he could have gotten the Jaredites here without having to build the barges and float for a year. He could have gotten the Lehi's family here by opening up the sea and having them walk across. But he had them all build boats and do the sailing and work at it. So maybe, and he may have, he could have gotten there a number of ways, but yeah, I appreciate that.
Okay, James Lucas, go ahead, please.
There we go. You referenced a previous presentation on the events in the Book of Mormon around the birth of Christ, and particularly the day without night. And
Yeah.
I was just wondering, since I haven't been a participant in every single of the forums, I don't recall that one. Was that perchance a presentation by Jerry Grover on his theory that the day without night was a Carrington event?
I think that was Jerry Grover's, wasn't it, Paul?
Yes.
Yeah, there was a lot of interesting stuff that was brought up there that I really appreciated, and I haven't. I need to probably go back and look at it some more. But yeah, that was the one I was thinking of.
Okay, because I just thought that was a very interesting theory of his, that a Carrington event would, or a solar mass ejection
Right,
hitting
right.
the Earth would explain all of the phenomena described in the Book of Mormon for that day without night.
Yep, exactly.
Okay, I just want to make the connection there.
Thank
Thanks, James. Terry, go ahead, please.
One of the things I find interesting is about the visit of the Magi is if they were from the Orient, which is east of Jerusalem, then they came from the east. How did they see a star in the east? And then when they visited Herod, who didn't live in Jerusalem, he lived farther north. Bethlehem is basically east of where Herod lived. And so if they saw the star in the east, then that makes a little bit more sense. It also sort of jives with your idea that they came from the Americas, and if they crossed the Atlantic and went that way, and then that's when they saw the star in the east. So that's sort of interesting to think of that star in the east and how you see it or where you see it. So just thought
Yeah,
I'd throw that in.
Thank you. I've wondered about that too, and what it means to say we saw it in the east, and then the star which they saw in the east they saw again, and it led them. I've wondered how a star could lead somebody, but I guess it did.
Let me point out that Roger Gilbert has compiled the complete list of the presentations that we've had in the Book of Mormon forum. That is, those that have been recorded have been now compiled and are available on the Book of Mormon Perspectives YouTube site. And he's done just a little bit of editing to make it so that you can actually pick them up by theme, by presenter. And it's a tremendous amount of work that Roger has done as a Christmas present for those of us that would like to get access to the repository of information that we have here. So yes, I think you go back to the Jerry Grover presentation on the volcano and earthquake at the end of Christ's life, and you'll find the references you're referring to.
Merle, did you have a question? I can't tell if he's got his hand up. Earl, go ahead. Earl Watt, did you have a question?
He seems to be muted.
Yeah, I can't.
I can't tell.
Anybody else have questions while we're waiting for them? Earl's microphone isn't working. If you want to type it in the chat, we can read it.
Oh, he says his microphone isn't working. Yeah.
I don't know where he went.
Sorry about that, Earl.
Well, he's hopefully typing. Then let me dub in a question. I'm curious, Ron, if you have what explanation you might have, or for that matter, anybody else, about the nature of a star that appears and leads people to the house where Jesus was. What natural phenomenon explains that?
Yeah, I don't have a specific theory on that, but it did say that it was a star such an one as they had never beheld before. And so whatever the phenomenon was, it wasn't just a, I mean, maybe using the word star isn't um, the right word to use here, because we have a very specific definition of stars as these balls of gas that are far, far out there, whatever. But this was a star such as they had never seen. And so, who knows?
If I could just throw an idea out here, a star, we have the description then is a star that appears to move, appears in different parts of the sky, and which is not been seen before and then isn't ever seen again. A comet or a large meteor would be, a possible explanation, physical, natural explanations for a phenomenon like that.
Sure.
Just suggesting that to kind of to go in with Jerry's suggestion that the day without a night was a Carrington event.
Yeah.
Which Paul, just for the record, I think that must have been a different presentation, because I don't recall Jerry mentioning that in his presentation about the volcano at the end of Christ's life. Although Jerry could have presented more than once. But I do know for a fact that he has not only presented, but he's posted online an extensive description of the day without night and showing how a Carrington event, solar massive fusion, would have explained all the phenomena described there. So just a few thoughts there, possibilities.
Well, you're right that Jerry has presented numerous times, and I've also read his material, and so therefore I may very well have compounded things, and so yeah, I think though perhaps the easiest approach now is to go to the repository that Roger Gilbert has given us in YouTube to be able to look it up by topic.
Yes, in fact, that's I think it's a wonderful thing. I don't know if anyone else, I've gone and looked at it, and it really is, what do we have? 150, 160 different videos posted, I believe.
Yes.
And it's really quite an amazing library when you look at it. And just from wandering about YouTube a bit, I've seen a number of the presentations already have quite a few views, even though Roger only brought the channel up fairly recently. So maybe folks are starting to pay attention, notice it, come across it.
Yeah, thank you for that, James. Terry, go ahead, please.
In approximately 1044, there was a celestial event like that we would call a star, or possibly in astronomical terms, it's a nova that explodes and we're able to see it. Anyway, the indigenous peoples in the Four Corners area recorded that in rock art. And so the experts are able to date that to a specific time that event happened from various things. So those kind of things do happen in the sky every once in a while. They're not real common, but they do happen.
Yep.
Earl Watt, I think you had a comment other than that your microphone wasn't working. So if you want to put that in the chats, then we'll be happy to pull it up. All right. Wave it on. Okay. Move it on then.
As a teacher, I'd like to know if anybody's score went up from last time.
I think I failed.
Not again.
Yeah, you remember me, huh?
Well,
I still enjoyed your presentation, Ron. This has always been one of my very favorite ones, even since the first time. It just makes so much sense, and I just appreciate how you know, as you say, we need to teach our children about angels, and I try to do that with my kids and my grandkids, and how important it is, even today.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful presentation. Thank you again.
Well, thank you. This is, I built on the Christmas quiz that my mom and dad made up, and they actually had a lot more about the angel that visited Elizabeth, and some other things like that in their quiz. But I found it trying to hit all of those things, you just can't do it. So
Right.
tried to focus it on these.
I'd appreciate also that the whisperings that I had from Rena yesterday included the idea that many of us, all of us, are called to function as angels too. For that may very well be our next calling as we move to the spiritual university.
Amen.
And for me, it's been a blessed Christmas because, in part, because I've had the chance to hold the little ones. I have little Bracken, who just born a couple of months ago, and we sing, "O come, all ye faithful, joyful and triumphant," and "Come, let us adore him, let us adore him." Wow, to adore our children and see in them the face of the divine is to give ourselves far better prospects for peace on earth and goodwill toward men.
Thank you, Paul. David, did you want to comment?
I have a question that's more of a general question, and since Paul has led us off this present topic exactly, I want to ask Ron specifically as a mathematician, but anybody else who wants to deal with this issue. Ron, you made the presentation, and Paul mentioned about the multi-dimensions for the divinity. Is God one or two? I found that a tremendously helpful, wonderful presentation. I've been wondering since then, what would good and evil look like from multi-dimensions?
David, you always ask the zingers. I'm not sure that I've really thought about that very well. I got to say, this is the first time I've thought in those terms. So I can't respond right now, but it's certainly an interesting question.
Well, if you do nothing more but think about it, I'd be glad to wrestle with it with you, because I find it an intriguing idea that good and evil might look very, very, very different from the multidimensional perspective.
Well, okay, so I'm going to respond a little bit.
Right.
I think in terms of physical and spiritual laws, that when God gave laws to people, he didn't say, "Thou shalt not jump off a cliff," okay? Because that's something physical. We recognize that if we jump off a cliff, we're going to fall to the bottom and die, And so we didn't need that kind of direction from the Lord, but we got dissociated from our spirits somehow from the time of Adam and Eve, that we have intimations of the Spirit from time to time, but we don't really we're not really connected in the same way as we are to the physical parts of our bodies and so on. And so the laws that he gives have to do with protecting our spirits from whatever kind of damage that spirits have. And I'm sure that they do have damage, but you know, he doesn't say thou shalt not rip thine arm off, but he does say, you know, what I have joined together, let no man pull asunder, you know, and in a spiritual way. And so there may be a lot to think about that where the disciplines of spirituality and the even the rules that he has given to us may do a lot for protecting in dimensions that we're just not aware of at all, but that we live in. So while I haven't specifically thought in terms of good and evil there, well, I guess I have a little bit, but that's okay. Just thinking off the top of my head.
The dimensionality would probably mean that he would for sure could know the consequences of our actions and have the ability both to know the consequences of our actions, but also to intervene to warn us about things.
Yes.
Because he'd have a different kind of relationship to time, or at least could have with as you add dimensions.
Yeah.
I think that's a very important point, because that time dimension that we stick on as number 4 is so limiting to us. And when you get beyond that, if we get and to be able to be in the spiritual dimension beyond that, and with God clearly beyond that, then it becomes, well, it's a little bit like trying to look. I found it very useful this summer when I went to Nauvoo, and here I had been on Zoom for 3 years with people like you, but that was primarily the followers of the way. And then I met people at Nauvoo that I had seen only in 2 dimensions previously, and I didn't recognize them. Embarrassed myself, because here were people that I knew the name when they introduced themselves, so I was embarrassed. But they looked so different in 3 dimensions than they did in 2 that I just simply didn't recognize them. And so I have to anticipate the same is going to be true as we move to that 5th dimension of spirit and look back and attempt to understand, apprehend, and embrace what we've seen before. Time, I think, becomes far less significant as you add dimensions.
But also, I think time is a gift from God because it allows us to be different from one day to the next. It allows for repentance. And if you don't have time, you don't have change. You don't have the possibility of change.
Wow. What fun.
Yeah.
Well, our fundamental allotted time is basically used, and let me sing. And if you want to continue to discuss, certainly welcome to. But it's Christmas, and so getting back to family is probably important too. Oh, star of wonder, star of light, star of wonder. Let's see, what is it?
Royal beauty bright.
Thank you, star of royal beauty bright, westward leading, all proceeding. Teach, guide us to thy perfect light, something like that. Well, good night and Merry Christmas, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Ron, so much for your presentation. Thank you all for participating with us, and may the good Lord bless you. May the Lord bless you. May the Lord keep you. May the Lord lift up his face to shine on you. May the Lord bless you. May the Lord keep you. May the Lord lift up his face to shine on you. Good night.
Good night. Merry Christmas to all.
Thanks, Paul. Merry Christmas, Ron. Thank you again.